Hey, just before you're seated, would you turn around, smile at somebody, and welcome them to the service? Thanks so much.
Well, good morning. Wow, I think it gets worse every week. Good morning. All right, there's the excitement. Someone even gave me like a fist pump. That was amazing. I love the excitement over there. We're so happy to have you here at Community this morning. We have lots going on. I'm going to ask our ushers to come in the front as we take up our morning tithes and offering. Just a quick announcement. Some of the changes that we have coming up this season. Our junior high youth ministry, so our junior high students will not be meeting on Fridays anymore. They're actually going to be meeting on Wednesday nights from 6 to 8. It's going to be at the same time as our Go Kids ministry. So parents who have kids going to that and junior high students, it's all one night for you, and we're really excited about what God's going to do in our junior high ministry this year. Let's just pray this morning. Following this prayer, we're going to have some announcements up on the screen for you with what's going on here at the church. Father, we thank you so much for this morning. We thank you that you're moving in this place, that you are touching lives, that you are speaking to people in this place. Father, I pray as we take up our morning tithes and offering, that God, you would use it for your kingdom, for your glory. In your name we pray. Amen.
Good morning and welcome to Community. If you're a first-time guest with us, we'd love for you to take one of our community cards located in the seat right in front of you. Fill it out and bring it to our welcome desk following the service. There, we're going to give you a book called Love Does by Bob Goff. It's a little gift from us to you saying thank you for being a part of our morning service. And now, check out these following announcements.
My husband was a combat vet. He suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder.
I've had 2 major incidents of major depression in my life.
My 2 daughters have had to see me go to the hospital in an ambulance. Just having to be a mom can be a struggle, and they're the ones that are affected the most.
I reached the point where I had a couple of attempts to take pills and commit suicide, and then thoughts that would not go away, and just a feeling of hopelessness that you just weren't going to get better.
It has probably been the saddest moment of my life to admit that I lost my marriage, mostly because of my illness.
God's helped me and the church has helped me just simply by being loved and having that unconditional love and not being judged, knowing that I can be myself and not be afraid, because I am afraid.
Just like we've seen in these videos, we know that people within our own community are really hurting. That's why Elam Counseling Services has decided to put on a free conference called Tackling Anxiety, Depression, and Other Challenges, the Keys to Transforming Your Life. It's taking place right here at Community Pentecostal Church on September 26th from 9 to noon. The cost is free, but donations are accepted. In order to register, please call 613-699-16177, or you can register online at elamcounselingministry.com. So if you're feeling anxious or depressed, or you're trying to help a loved one who's dealing with these issues, or even if your faith has been challenged by mental health illness, then this conference is for you, and don't forget to invite a friend. We hope to see you there.
Matthew chapter 28, 19 and 20, Jesus gives us the Great Commission. He tells us that we're to go, to make disciples, to teach and to baptize all nations. In essence, what he's saying is that we are to expand his kingdom. It's his kingdom that should be our first priority. You and I are each called to make that happen. In fact,
The truth is that we're called to be missionaries in our context in order for God's kingdom to advance. This September, starting on September 16th at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night, we are going to begin Kingdom Life. This will be the first semester to train people on how to live their life to expand the kingdom. This September, we're going to begin with a book called The Faith of Belief. And I'd encourage you to pick up this book and join us on these Wednesday nights. They will take place the first 3 or 4 Wednesdays of each month. The very last Wednesday night will be a night for you to practice some of the principles. I want to assure you that this is not just another Bible study. This isn't just a book review time. But what we are doing is taking the principles that we're learning and we're going to live them out so that we can advance God's kingdom in our context. So would you join me September 16th as we begin this new adventure, Kingdom Life.
Good morning, community. So excited to be here live from Tovett Park, which is the site of our homecoming softball tournament. Really excited for this year's homecoming weekend starting on September 11th. Goes right till the 13th. We got so many activities happening. Friday night at the church, our youth ministry, we have our kickoff with some knocker balls that we've rented. We're really excited, so bring your friends and students. It's gonna be a great, great night. On Saturday, after the softball tournament, we do have a special game between myself and Pastor Jeff. We're really looking forward to that. He's gonna draft his team, I'm gonna draft my team, and may the best team win. Followed by our chili and wings cook-off at the church. Really excited just to gather together as a church family and just have some fun and laugh about Pastor Jeff's team losing. Really excited about the Sunday morning. Sunday morning at church is going to be an incredible time. Please don't forget, it's a casual Sunday, so come dressed in the casual clothes. Following the service, we have a barbecue, we have kids' activities, we have a game between the board and the staff. We're really excited about it. Do not miss out on homecoming weekend. Just for your enjoyment right now, we have some highlight clips of Pastor Jeff playing baseball. Don't miss out on homecoming weekend.
Well, that concludes this morning's announcements.
Well, good morning, everyone. No, you've already seen me, but say it anyways. We are beginning a brand new series this morning called No Regrets. I'm excited about this series. I'm excited about this message this morning. I hope it speaks to you. Just a few weeks ago, Ainsley, myself, and our kids were on holidays at a cottage just about half hour from Mont Tremblant. It was probably the first 24 hours of the vacation, and I was sitting in a Adirondack chair on the dock of this cottage, looking at this beautiful scenery. And I gotta tell you, you would think that that would be a relaxing atmosphere, that it would bring tranquility to my soul, but the truth is that my stress level was very high. The reason had to do with 24 hours prior to this. You see, we bought a boat a number of years ago. We had been saving for a trip to take our kids away probably 7 years ago, and the trip was ended up not happening. We took what we had from the money we saved up, bought a boat, and we've used it very infrequently while we've been here in Ottawa. And so just the last day of our previous holiday in July, we finally took it out. We were out for 5 minutes, and the boat started to make these weird sounds, and all of a sudden I saw smoke coming out of the motor. Now I'm not mechanical, but I know that's not a good sign. I mean, smoke was it was blowing everywhere, and so we had to get towed back in, which was very, very embarrassing, and knew that we would need to get this thing fixed. There's a guy in Russell who I've used before whenever we've had a problem with this boat, and I took the boat out to him, explained what had happened. He said, "Oh, easy peasy." Now, friends, that's my favorite line from a mechanic. Easy peasy, which for me that means everything's gonna be fine, this is gonna be very inexpensive. And so I left it with him. He said, "This is probably your water pump, it's gonna be no problem, we'll fix it." I'm packing my vehicle. We are about 5 minutes away from leaving for our vacation. I'm in the driveway and my phone goes off, and it's Pierre. And he says, "Hey Jeff, what did you do to your motor?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, You got it so hot that there are parts inside that have melted. And I said, well, we didn't really do anything. It's not like we lit it on fire or anything. We just rode this thing out on the Ottawa River. And he said, okay, look, I'm gonna check it out, and I'm gonna do a compression test and see if there's anything solvable or anyways, fixable. We're gonna do this compression test. And so he says, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. My stress level goes up here because I think melted parts in my motor. That doesn't sound very cheap. 5 minutes later, he calls me back. He says, yep, I did a compression test. He starts to tell me stuff that I don't understand. He says, your motor is completely shot. And he said, he says, it's completely gone. Well, my heart just drops right to the floor. And he says to me, he says, we're going to have to rebuild it. He says, now it's a 90 horsepower Johnson motor. And he says, and so it's worth putting money into because it's hard to buy these things for the price that I'm going to fix it for. And he says, but we're gonna, you want to rebuild it? And I said, well, what are we talking? And he said, well, you know, when I give you a quote, I don't want to change it no matter what happens. If there's parts are more expensive, I said, when I give you a quote, I'm gonna make sure it lands right there. I said, okay, but like, what are we talking? Like, give me range. Well, friends, he gives me a range that didn't bring a smile to my face. I mean, I'm in the driveway, and I get off the phone with him. I turned to one of my kids, and I said, oh, my goodness, and I explained it. And then I thought, what do I tell Ainsley before we go? She's maybe wondering, and so we start the vacation. I tell her how much it's going to be, and we're discussing what our plan is going to be. Do we put the money in, maybe sell it in the future? What do we do? I mean, the stress level has just gone right through the roof. So back to the dock. I'm sitting in this tranquil spot, this beautiful scene. I can look out, I can see all of nature, this gorgeous lake. I'm away on holidays. I don't have to worry about anything. I mean, no matter what happens at the church, one of our pastors will take care of it. I don't need to be concerned. I don't need to worry about my home, doing any of the chores at home, because I'm now away on vacation. I'm supposed to be restful, but all I can think about is this boat. You ever been there? I mean, I'm trying to enjoy my holidays, but every 5 minutes I'm reminded of the number that he said to me on the phone. I'm trying to figure out, we can't afford this. Do we put the money in? Do we sell it? What do we do? I mean, my stress level is so high. And I am sitting there for the first 24 hours trying to enjoy the situation before me, but all I can think about is the stress of the moment, this boat. Then on that second day, all of a sudden something hit me. God spoke to me and he said, Jeff, if you keep focused on the stress of this, something you can't control, if you keep thinking about the boat, if you keep thinking about this financial burden, if you keep thinking about this repair, you are going to miss out on all that I've given you for this week. You're going to miss out celebrating what's before you. You're going to leave the 7 days, and this is what's going to happen. You're going to walk away with regret because you will have been blessed with 7 days of rest and yet not rested at all. And friends, I don't know about you, but there are so many times I find myself in life with God speaking to me that message. That I am trying to enjoy things of life, but my mind is so focused on the stressful stuff that I get consumed by the stresses of life. I get consumed by the pressures of life. And days later, I realize that I might as well have not even lived those days because I didn't enjoy anything. Anybody been there? You're going through life and you're supposed to be enjoying this life. Jesus said, I came to give you life and life more abundantly. But you go day after day and your main goal every single day is simply survival. Survival. I mean, you don't want to talk about revival, you want to talk about survival. I got to get up in the morning. If I can just survive to the nighttime without another thing breaking in my life, if I can just get through this day, and you wake up in the morning going, I can't wait to return to this very spot, my bed. If I can get through this day, and we go through life and we miss the life that God's given us because of the stresses. And you go long enough like that, friends, and you will sit back and reflect upon the days you've wasted, the moments you've failed to enjoy, and you will be full of regrets There's an interesting story found in Luke chapter 10, verses 33 to 42. If you just look up at the screen right there, Briar, if you throw that verse up, it says, as Jesus' disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary, and look at what I've highlighted, has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. And Jesus shows up at the house of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And it's a great time because he's friends with this family. And Martha, you've heard the story many, many times. Martha's running around, putting things in the oven, dusting, vacuuming. I mean, she's just being a Molly Maid type of host. She's just making sure everything's good. And there's Mary, and she's just kind of sitting there. She's listening to Jesus. Hi, Jesus. Oh, tell us another story. Tell us another miracle. Tell us another thing that you did. Tell us, Jesus. And she's so enjoying him. And Martha's in the background, and she's so frustrated. Her stress level's rising up. She can't figure out how come her sister's getting away with this. I mean, she's got a dust feather in her hand. She's wearing an apron. She's got food all over her. There's still things to be cleaned. And Mary's sitting there doing nothing. Finally, she comes down and she says, hey, Jesus, don't you care? Don't you care that Mary's not doing anything? Do you see what I'm doing? She should be helping out. And Jesus says, well, hold on for a second, Martha. You're getting all stressed. You're getting all consumed with things, and you're actually missing out enjoying life. You see, Mary's chosen the better thing. She's actually enjoying me. You're preparing for me. You're working for me, but you're not actually enjoying life, the essence of life. The essence of life is right here in your home, and you're not even enjoying me. You're so caught up with all the worries of life. Think about this. Do you think that Mary, when she gets to the end of her life, she's going to say, man, I so wish that I had vacuumed a little more that day that Jesus showed up. I so wish that we had have dealt with the dust a little bit more. I so wish that we had cooked one more meal for Jesus. Or do you think maybe Martha will get to the end of her life and say, I wish I had spent more time with the one who is life? You see, it's a focus of priorities. It's a focus of our attention. Mary caught hold of life. She caught hold, life was right before her, and she chose to celebrate the life before her, while Martha was caught up with all the stresses that didn't matter. This morning, I want to talk to you about celebrating life, because I think for some of us, we're going through life and we're just trying to survive, and we're missing out what God's actually given us. I think some of us are missing out the joy that God has placed before us. And I want us to focus in this morning on the idea of celebrating life. So here are some principles to help you enjoy life. First of all, principle number one, you won't appreciate what you want until you appreciate what you've got. You won't appreciate what you want until you appreciate what you've got. Look at this, Genesis chapter 1. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then verse 4. God saw that the light was good. God saw that the light was good. He saw it. He saw it. It's so interesting that this first chapter of the Bible focuses on God doing, and yet as he's doing, he's actually taking time to appreciate what he's got. He's taking time to reflect. He creates the heavens and earth, and then he steps back and he goes, wow, that's pretty good. Look what I got here. Look what I've created here. Wow, I did a pretty good job. I'm pretty impressed with what we've got. Wow, it's fairly excellent what's before me. Now, friends, what you need to pay attention to is this, is that God is not finished working. He actually desires more things to be created. He's got 6 days worth of work to do, but after day 1, he doesn't sit there and go, oh, I just can't wait till I get to day 2. I just can't wait till I get to day 3. Man, when I get to day 6 and I create human beings, it's going to be so incredible. No, even though he knows what he wants down the road, he takes time to appreciate what's before him. He takes time to appreciate what's before him. Look, In verse 4, he creates light, he says it's good. In verse 11, he creates land and sea, he says it's good. In verse 12, he creates vegetation, he says it's good. In verse 18, he creates the sun and moon. He says it's good. Verse 22, he creates sea creatures and birds. He says it's good. In verse 25, he creates animals. He says it's good. Oh, and then he gets to you and I. He creates Adam. He creates mankind, and he goes, it's not good. It's very good. It's very good. You see, God takes the time to look at what's before him every single day, that which he has, that which he has already created, and he takes time to delight in it. The word saw means to perceive something. It's to make a judgment call on what's before you. So God doesn't just view it. He doesn't just see with his eyes. That's not what the Bible's saying. He actually takes time to evaluate what's before him. And this word good means excellent of its kind. So this is what the Bible's saying, is that every day God took a moment to perceive, to reflect, to evaluate what was before him. And when he looked at what he had before him, even though he knew what he wanted to create, even though on day one he knew what he wanted for day two, he didn't rush into day two. He took time in day one to say, this is most excellent. This is good. He took time to celebrate what was before him. Before he ever desired something down the road, he took time to appreciate what was right there before him. So many times we're rushing for the next day. Oh, I can't wait till this moment. I can't wait till I get this. I can't wait till the church gets here. I can't wait till this. And it's good to have anticipation, but so many times we're so forward thinking that we're missing the very things that are before us. I remember when I first started in our district office, I used to be part of this club that CCM, I forget what it was called. What's the music club that used to be? CCMI? Sure, that's good. Pastor Adam says that's a good one. All right, so CCMI. We would get this box of music. I'd get a box of music every quarter. Every quarter, I would get 10 worship CDs. The next month, I would get 10 contemporary Christian music CDs. So 4 times a year this would happen. So at the end of the year, I would get 80 CDs. It was like heaven on earth for me because I love music. So I would be anticipating constantly this package would come in. I've always been somebody who's eager to see mail come in. I know most of the time it's bills, but I'm always hoping that the odd time I'll get surprised and you know, someone will send me a check for $1 million or something like that. Never ever happens, but I still anticipate. Some of you do too. And the box would come in, and I'd be so excited, and I'd be like a kid on Christmas Day, and I'd put the box in my front passenger seat as I'd travel across our district. And I'd unwrap the first CD, and I'd stick it into the CD player, and I'd be traveling across the district to say I'd be going to the far end of Toronto or up to Keswick or something like that, and I'd listen to the CD and go, hey, that was pretty good. And then I'd pull, as soon as it was done, as soon as it hit song number 10, I'd pull it out, and I'd pick up the next CD, unwrap it, throw it in. And I'd listen to that, and this one's not as good as the first one. And then take it out as soon as song number 10 was done and put it aside. Grab the next CD. I mean, friends, it took me 10 listens before the whole box was done. And something I realized was that I was so eager to get to the next CD, I didn't even appreciate the first CD I had. I mean, I would listen to the one CD, and I would just quickly listen, get a familiarity with it, and then I would move on to the next one. I was so eager for the next CD. Then down the road, I would grab one of the CDs. Someone would say, hey, have you heard this band? They're fantastic. And I thought, well, I've heard them before, but I hadn't really paid attention. And I'd pull out one of those CDs that I'd rush through, and I'd throw it into the CD player, and I'd listen to it a few times and go, oh my goodness, this is a really good Christian band. This is really good. Their poetic license, their way they write is incredible. The music is solid. Why didn't I pay attention to this before? And I find that sometimes I'm like that in life. I'm so much in a rush for the next CD, the next clothing piece, the next experience, the next. I'm looking for day 6, and I'm forgetting about the joys of day 1. And friends, we can never fully enjoy the things we want until we appreciate the things we have. I've been in ministry for just over 20 years now. And I've learned that there are 2 types of pastors in this world. There are the stayers and the goers, or the movers, the stayers and the movers. The movers seem to move every few years. I've watched this at a youth pastor level, at a kids pastor level, music pastor level, senior pastor level, assistant pastor level. There are these pastors who come into churches, they declare some audacious dream, they say, come follow me, and then 3 years later they say, oh, God spoke to me and I need to move on. Now I'm not making fun, I don't mean to be making fun of these individuals. But they just are constantly moving on. They hit a wall, and then they feel like there's something better for them down the road. And many times they attribute it to the call of God on their lives. But the people who stay, I met some of these pastors, Doug Schneider, Frank Patrick, Keith Smith, Mark Scarr. Some of these pastors who've been there for longer than the average. They build resilience. They are respected by their congregation because they trust them. They are able to lay foundations. But friend, probably the most important thing is that they're happy. They're happy. Because these individuals, these pastors who have learned to get beyond just moving every 3 years, every 18 months, every 4 years, whatever, they don't have problem-free pastoring experiences, but in the midst of all the trials, they've come to appreciate what's right before them. They've learned to love their congregation. They learned to love the people around them. They've learned to love the things that God's given them. They've counted their blessings. And I want to suggest to you that if you're going to enjoy life, you've got to learn to pay attention to what's right before you. You've got to learn to pay attention to the day one blessings. You can't constantly be looking forward to day 6. It's not wrong to want it, but if you are constantly moving forward in your mind, moving forward in your heart, waiting for the day that you will be happy, you will never reach happiness because you failed to celebrate what's right before you. We've got to celebrate the things that God has already given us. Secondly, not only do we learn that you won't appreciate what you want until you appreciate what you've got, but if you turn over to Genesis chapter 45, if you want to celebrate what's before you, you've got to let go of what's behind you. If you want to celebrate what's before you, you've got to let go of what's behind you. Look at this. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence," so that there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." And when they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt." Next slide. And now, do not be distressed. This is so interesting. He's encouraging his brothers, the ones who really abandoned him. "Do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Look, don't be distressed. Don't be angry with yourselves. God put me here. For 2 years now, there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Then look at this. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Joseph's brothers are incredibly upset and jealous with this young man. His dad's made him this brand new designer coat. I mean, it is selling for more money than anybody in this place has got. I mean, it is a beautiful coat, and he's strutting it around when he's just a young man. He's talking about these visions and these dreams that God has placed inside of him. He is in this moment of pride, and he's telling everybody what God's going to do in his life. His brothers get upset, and so they throw him into a pit. And then they sell him. I like to sell my sister sometimes. So anybody, you got family? Never mind. Anyways, this is their response to him. I mean, can you imagine? Your flesh and blood have thrown you into a pit. They've sold you to be a slave. They've made up a lie to your dad. You never get to see your dad for years, all because of these brothers who are jealous of you. And now Joseph has found himself in this very prominent spot, and his brothers come in. And friends, if it's me, I'd be smiling. I'd be thinking, now's the time. Now I'm going to let it go. No, these guys are going to have a difficult moment. They're going to have a difficult season. What can I do for them? I can make up all kinds of lies, throw them in prison. I can make things rough. But Joseph looks at them and he does the unthinkable. He encourages them what's before them. Don't be discouraged. Don't be angry with yourself. God put me here. Let's celebrate right now. Let's celebrate what's taking place right now. Don't you know, brothers, that God placed me here? There's a famine in the land. Let's rejoice in what God has provided, an opportunity for me to serve in a way to bless your family, to bless my family, to bless my dad who I haven't seen in years. He has made a way. Let's celebrate what's here. And the only reason why he's able to do this is because he lets go of his past. He is not bound by bitterness. He is not bound by anger. He is not holding a grudge towards his brothers, but he lets go of what's in the past to grab hold of what's before him. You see, friends, you can never celebrate what's before you if you keep holding on to what's behind you. You see, you sit in the seat of the now, the seat of what's before you, and you begin to look towards things, and God goes, hey, look at the future I have for you. Look at the blessings that are before you. And he begins to speak to you about all these things of life that you should celebrate. And you want to sit there, but you just keep looking over your shoulder to an experience of the past. And you move from the seat of celebrating what's before you to the seat of the past. That person told me that I don't preach very well. Well, we're going to review their membership. There are people posting weird things on Facebook that are offensive to me. I'm going to, Oh, this person said something to me that hurt me. Oh, I just can't get beyond. This person did something to me that is so hurtful in my past. When I was 6 years old, this person did something to me. And I'm consumed by it every day. And we keep looking towards our past, the offenses, the hurts, the failures. We keep looking backwards. And God's saying, I want you to celebrate life, the things that are before you, but you can't sit in the seat of celebration when you keep looking back at your past. You can't keep your eyes forward if all you're doing is focused on the hurts and the responses of broken human beings towards you. And so many of us find ourselves sitting in the past, the seat of the past, the seat of things that have taken place before. We can't figure out why there's no joy in our life. We can't figure out why depression has overcome us. We can't figure out why we never seem to get ahead. It's because you can't see what God has placed before you because you keep looking backwards. If you want to celebrate what's before you, get out of the seat of what's happened and move into the seat of what's before you. Get rid of your past. Get rid of your hurts. Get rid of your unforgiveness. Get rid of the things that you cannot correct so that you can embrace the things that God has planted right before you. You will never, go ahead. You will never enjoy your future if you don't let go of your past. Look at this next passage. Mark chapter 10. Then they came to Jericho as Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city. A blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Next slide. Jesus stopped and said, call him. So they called to the blind man, cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you. And it says, throwing his cloak aside. We're going to look at this in 1 second. He jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. Go, said Jesus, your faith has healed you. And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. Blind Bartimaeus had this cloak. It represented a number of things. It would be the thing that he would wear. It was some kind of piece of clothing that he would wear on a regular basis. He'd wear it around, and when it was hot, when it was the middle of the Middle East sunny day, he would take this cloak and he would cover his head to protect him from the heat. At nighttime, he would take this off and he would lay down on this cloak and he would wrap himself up like it was like a blanket. This cloak was his protection in the day. It was his clothing. It was his bed at nighttime. But there's even something more significant. Many historians point to the fact that in that day, people who were beggars had to get legitimacy to their claims to beg. And so Bartimaeus at some point in his life would have had to come before some group of authorities, most likely a religious authority. And he would have to show that he was in this unfortunate circumstance. He would have to show his physical problem. That he would have to prove that he was blind and that he would need this kind of cloak so that he could beg. And this cloak would be a representation to everybody in the community that his claim to beg was legitimate. The cloak represented his legitimacy to his past. And Jesus calls him, and Bartimaeus only has one thing that's valuable. The thing that has legitimized his past. The thing that has legitimized his pain. The thing that has legitimized everything that he's been doing for his whole life. And the Bible tells us that Bartimaeus throws off his legitimate claim to embrace his future. This is so good. He throws off that which legitimizes his claim to whine and beg and plead. I need money. Look at my poor situation. Look at me. Look at my cloak. This is my legitimacy to whine and complain. Friends, some of you are holding on to the time someone abused you. Some of you are holding on to that husband who did something against you. Some of you are holding on to that person who spoke ill of you in the church. Some of you are holding on to even anger against God because of an unanswered prayer. You've got your legitimacy. You've got your reason why you're complaining, why you're so bound in your past. And God says, let go of your legitimacy. Let go of it. Throw your cloak aside so that you can embrace the future that I have for you. Let go of the past so that you can grab hold of your future. If you want to celebrate the future, friends, you've got to let go of your past. You've got to let go of your past. Listen, I'm not trying to minimize hurts, friends. But please hear me for a second. The person who has hurt you in the past, they're as broken as you are. And you can't go back and fix their mistakes, their wrongdoings, just like you can't go back and fix what you've done in the past. They may never apologize to you. They may never make things right. They may never make restitution. But if you choose to sit in the seat of the past, you will never, ever enjoy the life that's before you. You will never enjoy the life that's before you. You got to choose today which seat you're going to sit in, the seat of the future or the seat of the past. You can never enjoy the future until you let go of the past. Lastly, look over in Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1. The last principle is this. If you want to celebrate the unseen, you got to learn to celebrate the seen. Verse 18 says, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them. Very important. Since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. What Paul's saying is that even though we can't see God, even though that may be some people's excuse, we can't see him, that God has actually revealed his eternal power and his nature by the things that he's created. That we can look around this world and see who he is by the things that he has created. The things that we see are the things that reveal the unseen. And friends, if we fail to appreciate the things that are seen, we will never appreciate the one who is unseen. You can't fully praise God without giving him glory for the things that are before you. You can't. You've got to appreciate the things that are seen in order to see the things that are unseen. Look at the person right beside you just for a second. Just do this. Just humor me for a second. Now, you may like the person beside you. You may dislike the person beside you. You may think they're handsome. You may think they're ugly. Please do not communicate the latter. But you may have your opinions of the person that is beside you. But I want you to know that the person who's beside you is not just another human being. That person reflects who God is. That person that's beside you represents God's image. You see, and we won't look at it, but in James chapter 1, verses 9 and 10, James says, hey, some of you come to church, and you do a great job praising God. I mean, you enter into the songs, you give God all the glory, you're able to embrace every song and sing it out with all you got. But then you walk out and you get into the car and you begin to talk about people from the church. Did you see what she was wearing today? My goodness. She live at Value Village or what? Did you hear what that guy said? Oh, he's got problems. Oh, that person, he comes to church every week, but he never raises his hands. I'm not even sure he's a Christian. That pastor, oh, sometimes the things he says irritates me. This and this and this and this and this. That's just my home. Just joking. And we begin to tear one another apart. And James says, how is it that you can bless God with one voice and yet curse humans with the next word you say? Don't you know that the person who's beside you is the image of him? And as you curse that person, and as you speak ill of that person, you are actually speaking ill of the one who made that person. You see, if you curse the person beside you, then you're cursing God. But if you bless the person beside you, if you speak life of the person beside you, if you celebrate the person beside you, then you are celebrating the seen and eventually celebrating the unseen. You celebrate the person beside you, and you will celebrate the one who made that person. You see, you can't celebrate the unseen and not celebrate the seen. So clear. My friend Paul Fraser was at this festival, and the speaker was Bob Goff. Anybody know who Bob Goff is? He wrote Love Does, and lawyer, very excitable person. I mean, Bob Goff has traveled the world, met with ambassadors. I mean, he's done crazier things than anybody in this room has ever. I mean, we put us all together. I don't think we could match what he's done. And so this festival was very unorganized, and the person running it came to Paul at the end of it and said, hey, Paul, we forgot to get a ride for Bob to the airport. Don't know how we missed this. He was our main speaker, but we did. Would you mind taking him to the airport? Well, Paul was in a rush. He didn't really enjoy the festival, wanted to move on, and he was hemming and hawing. He thought, okay, I'll take Bob Goff to the airport. And so Bob gets in the car, and Paul says to him, hey, Bob, tell me something about yourself. Now, if you've ever read Love Does, you know that Paul would have heard an awful lot because Bob began to talk about all the crazy things he's done for God, about all the places he's traveled, all the people he's met, all the crazy radical expressions of love. And for two hours he begins to go, he goes on and on and on and on talking about this stuff. And at the end of two and a half hours, he finally finishes and he turns to Paul and he says to Paul, so tell me something about yourself. Paul's telling this story last year at General Conference. We were sitting after a service. He tells us, and Paul said, I just look forward like, well, Bob, my life is pretty boring compared to yours. And Bob's like, come on, you got to tell me something. Well, I'm going to Mexico with my wife next week. And Bob goes, Paul, that's incredible. You live such a fascinating life. Now, I'm listening to this story in this restaurant after one of our services, and I start laughing. And everybody in the room starts laughing. Because Paul's going to Mexico, he lives a fascinating life. So I can't help it, but I can't figure out why Bob Goff would be so excited by this statement. So I use social media, which those of you who are on it know that I'm on there all the time, and I tweet out to Bob Goff, at Bob Goff. What is it that makes Coach Fraser's life so exciting? And I share with it, and everybody starts laughing. 5 minutes later, Bob Goff responds. He says, Jeff, there are just so many things that make his life exciting. And I'm like, I can't, like this guy is patronizing or something. And I'm sitting there, and we laughed like crazy, but I began to realize that Bob was not being patronizing. He wasn't being ingenuous. That he had learned to celebrate everything that he saw around him. He saw the hand of God. He saw the work of God in everything that was around him. He saw the thumbprint in everything that was around him, and he knew that if he was going to celebrate the unseen properly, he had to celebrate the seen properly. Briar, show this next picture, the one with my red shoes. This is one of my favorite pictures. Those shoes right up in the top corner, those are mine. I know you're probably wondering why in the world does our senior pastor wear red shoes? They're now my gardening shoes, just for your information. But these are Tom's that I bought for $15. Got a great deal a couple of years ago, and I hadn't wore them very many places because they're red. And when I'd wear them places, people would make comments about it, and so I didn't wear them very often. But I went to Thailand a year ago, and I wore those everywhere we went. And you can talk to our teammates. I wore them nonstop. I saw this picture came to my mind this week for the conclusion of this message, because I started thinking about how this picture and this simple thing that has been made by humans reminds me of God. I mean, maybe you don't see it, but I do. First of all, I see diversity. I see Peter DeWitt shoes, which are on the second step from the bottom. These big, massive running shoes. And then I see sandals. And then I see some Crocs up by my shoes. I see some plastic sandals. I see some sneakers right there. I see diversity. And it reminds me that our God is a diverse God. That he doesn't make anything in one way. You look around and there's some people who may look like one another, but we're all different. And this picture reminds me of the diversity of God. Then it reminds me of freedom of choice. Because while Peter chose to buy running shoes, I chose to buy Tom's. I find them the most comfortable shoes that are out there. And so I chose. I didn't have to go before some shoe person, a communist shoe person, and what's my shoe? Well, you got to wear red shoes just like everybody else. Communist colors. That wasn't in my notes. Anyways, you have to wear red shoes. No, I got to choose. It reminds me that God has given us free choice. That he doesn't force me upon him. He's invited me to a relationship. And something I see that may seem so trivial to you, it reminds me of God, the allowance for free choice. It also reminds me of God's provisions. It reminds me that I always have shoes on my feet, things that I take for granted at times. I'm reminded that even the times where the boat bill comes in and I'm not sure I'm going to pay it, that I've got another meal on the table, that I've got shoes on my feet, that I got pants that I can wear. And even when my clothes are wearing out, I'm thankful that God provides. It reminds me of the services that we had where the presence of God came in the east end of Thailand, in the poorest province, that God's a God who cares. This picture points me back to a moment where God was there. You see, it seems so trivial, but what I see brings me back to the one I don't see. I was biking to the church this week. I won't tell you the full story, but I ended up taking the bike path along the water. And I started looking out, I was thinking about my message, looking out at creation, and I began to look at the trees, and I thought, look at God's artistry at work. Look at the way he's provided trees and grass and diversity here. Look at the beauty of creation. And then as I'm biking along, I see this little frog. I didn't run over it, thankfully. This little frog in the middle of nowhere using the Ottawa bike path. Didn't have a helmet on, Gilbert. And I see this frog and I think to myself, this frog has no idea about my world. I have no idea about this frog's world. And yet God cares for this frog. I don't know why he cares about the frog, but I don't know why he cares about me. I keep biking. And I come off the trail. I'm on Jean d'Arc. And there's a lady in a walker, an older lady. And so I got off the path and I just smiled at her. And she smiled back at me. She didn't need to say anything, but her smile let me know her thankfulness. I thought, thank you, God, for allowing me to understand communication through somebody I've never met. You've just put some things here that help me understand. You've created us like this. And then I started to get towards the church, and I had passed the thermometer, and it was 30 degrees Celsius. So friends, I hate to tell you this, but I started to notice something about my shirt. It was getting wet. It hadn't been raining, but it started to get wet, and it was sticking to my body. And I know most of us would think, oh, that's gross. But as I'm coming across the parking lot, I start to think about it. I went, God, thank you so much for sweat. Somebody's excited. Listen, if you've never been to this church, next week we're singing the Sweat song. It's going to be incredible. Man, if I didn't have sweat, then my body would overheat in this 30 degrees weather. But God made the sweat. He made sure that my body knew how to respond to the heat around me. I want God to thank you for sweat. I saw so many things. Jill Bear and I were out kayaking on Friday morning. We came to a spot with a big crane, and he took out his camera to take a picture. And I said to him, I just love God's creation. And I loved his response. He said, Pastor, I think we should just stop and thank God right now for his creation. And on the Ottawa River in our kayaks, we just began to thank God for what he had created. Friends, if you want to learn how to thank the one we can't see, begin to be appreciative of the things that you can see. Begin to be thankful for the meal that comes across your table today. Be thankful for the job that you have. Be thankful for the car you have, for the home you have, for the person sitting beside you, for the shoes that are on your feet. Be thankful for the trees that are out there. Be thankful for the air conditioning here in this Canadian hot temperature. Be thankful for the things we can see, because they all point to the one who is eternal. They all point to the one that we can't see. If you want to praise the one who's seen or unseen, you got to praise the one who's unseen. Friends, don't let life pass you by without enjoying it. You can't celebrate day 6 until you celebrate day 1. You can't. You can't grab hold of the future until you let go of the past. And friends, you can't fully embrace the one who's unseen until you begin to embrace the things that he's placed before you, the things that he's seen. Would you stand with me? John, would you come back? We serve an incredible God. Friends, I want you to know we serve a God who's given us life. And I pray this week that you would look at life in an incredibly different way, that you would be like our Father who would step back and say, it is good, it is good, this is good, this is great. We serve an incredible God. It's time we celebrate life. I asked John that we would sing this one song, and as they're preparing, I'm going to ask you just to bow your heads for 1 second. If you're in this place this morning, and perhaps you're stirred inside and you say, Pastor, I want to serve this God that you're talking about, this God who gives us good life. I've never given my life to him, but today I want to give my life to him for the first time. If that's you, would you just raise your hand? Is there anybody in this place? Thank you, ma'am, over on my left. Thank you, ma'am, right here. Anybody else? Just quickly raise your hand. Thanks. Come on, anybody else? Get 2 over here on my left. 3 now. Those who raise your hands, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. When this service is done in just a few moments, I'm going to invite you to come to the front. We're going to have people who will talk to you, and they're going to walk you through the next steps, and they're going to give you simply a little package, nothing weird. But I'd ask that you just come to the front, and one of our prayer workers will be with you, and they'll talk you through the next steps. Best decision you've ever made. We're going to close with a song, and then I'll pray, and then we're going to dismiss. But the song is Oh Happy Day. And friends, David said, this is the day the Lord has made. This is it. I will rejoice and be glad in it. There are blessings upon blessings upon blessings before us, and we need to rejoice in this day that God has made. Would you sing this song this morning?
The greatest day in history. Death is beaten, you have rescued me. Sing it out, Jesus is alive. The empty cross, the empty grave, a life eternal, you have won the day. Shout it out, Jesus is alive. He's alive. Free at last, meeting face to face. I am yours, Jesus, you are mine. An endless joy, perfect peace. alive. Let's sing happy day. And oh, happy day, happy day. You wash my sins away. Oh, happy day, happy day. I'll never be the same. Oh, happy day, happy day. You wash my sins away. Oh, happy day, happy day. I'll never be the same. Forever I am changed. Ever I am changed. And oh, what a glorious day. What a glorious way. And that you have saved me. And oh, what a glorious day. And what a glorious day. Yeah. Oh, happy day, happy day. You washed my sins away. Oh, happy day, happy day. I'll never be the same. Oh, happy day, happy day. You washed my sins away. Oh, happy day, happy day. Forever I am changed. Forever I am changed. I'll never be the same. Forever, forever I am changed.
Hallelujah. God, as we leave this place this morning, I pray we would be full of life. Jesus, I pray that we will grab hold of everything you've created, that God, we will be thankful for the things that are here, not just for the things that we want. I pray, dear God, that we'll embrace the things before us, not letting